Welcome to another week of Sit Start. This is week 16, part one. We have so many games now that no one's on bye that we're breaking this up into two parts so that it's a little easier to digest and get all the information you need since it's fantasy championships on the line and every
Yeah,
decision's mattering now.
it is. You want to bring home that trophy. You want to win.
I've heard some people have if you lose or are in last place, you have to do some things you don't want to do. So you might be competing to just not have to do whatever that is.
Some leagues have some crazy things. If your league has anything crazy that your loser has to do, please drop it in the comments because I'm super curious. We don't do anything mean to our loser, but maybe we should think of something. It'd be fun. Well, let's jump into who to start and who to sit. I know some of my players this week have some not so favorable matchups.
I wanted to remind our listeners that we have the DraftKings contest going this week. There's so much football that we're doing multiple DraftKings contests. And for those who maybe you're not as excited about your fantasy championship and want to go have some fun, join us in our DFS. It'll be a lot of fun and keep Saturday interesting as well as Sunday. Okay, let's go back to those games now.
Let's start with Thursday night. We usually don't get to do a Thursday night game, but now that we're doing this early, let's jump into Thursday night. It's one of our more exciting games, Denver at the Chargers. So, Chargers are favored by 2.5, and the over under is 42. Last week, we saw Justin Herbert get banged up. He injured his ankle, but I pretty much expect him to play. He's been just grunting it out and grinding through this year. Lad McConkey isn't on the injury report this week so far. And they've got a short week. So that's really, really good news for fantasy owners. Also, we saw Stone Smart step into the tight end role last week for Will Disley, and he ended up catching 5 passes for 50 yards. Disley didn't practice on Monday or Tuesday, so I think we're going to be able to expect more from Stone Smart again this week. So if you're looking for a tight end, he's probably out there to pick up. And Herbert loves to target his tight end.
Is there a thing like tight end handcuffs? We talked about running back handcuffs a couple weeks ago. Guess you're not
No,
usually trying to pick up a tight end handcuff.
they usually don't get hurt, but this year we've seen a lot of them getting hurt. Anyhow, these two teams actually met in week 6, and I mean they're in the same division, so obviously they play a couple times. The Chargers won 23-16 in that game, but in that game, J.K. Dobbins ran for almost 100 yards. No J.K. Dobbins in this game, and Gus Edwards has been extremely ineffective at running back. So we're going to be looking for them to pass the ball a little bit more. If we look on the Broncos side of the ball, Bo Nix looked like a rookie finally against a bad Colts defense. We thought he was going to have a great game, but he did not look so hot last week on in that game against the Colts. But the Colts made lots of mistakes and let Denver control the game and get the win. And the Chargers let Mike Evans run up almost 40 fantasy points last week. So we're waiting to see, can Bo Nix and Sutton kind of run that up against the Chargers again, and then we could get our big passing matchup. We'll have to wait and see. When the teams met in week 6, the cornerback Pat Surtain only played a few snaps, and he was hurt in that game and ended up leaving. He was hurt in the game last week against the Colts, but he's listed as a full participant both days, Monday and Tuesday's practice reports. So we're waiting to see if the Broncos cornerback is going to be able to play or not.
So it sounds like some must starts are, of course, Lad McConkey. Yay, he's back. Cortland Sutton, Justin Herbert.
I like Justin Herbert. If you were playing him, then I doubt that you are still in your championship with Justin Herbert. But if you are, go ahead and play him. I like this matchup. I wouldn't play Gus Edwards. I'll sit him. He's just been so bad. And all the running backs for Denver, I'm not going to pick who it's going to be this week. So you're not starting any of them. One note on running backs, J.K. Dobbins, who we just talked about having that great game in week 6, he's been out since week 12 with an MCL sprain, and he is eligible to come back in week 17. So if you're in a deep league or you're looking for a running back, you might get a jump on that and go ahead and look for him and see if somebody dropped him and pick up J.K. Dobbins and keep him around.
Well, let's continue on to the Houston at Kansas City game where Kansas is favored by 3. This is a Saturday game. We have Saturday football again. Over under is
Saturday football.
41. Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. Well, I kind of am. We've got the big question, the $1 million question of the weekend: is Patrick Mahomes going to play? And who knows? We're not going to know until they probably kick off that game if Patrick Mahomes is going to play. I bet he plays in some format, whether or not he's just there as a backup or if he actually starts the game. I think he'll be there ready to play in case they need him somehow. He was listed as a full participant at practice on Tuesday, but he's saying he'll do whatever is best for the team. Behind him is Carson Wentz. I'm not a big Carson Wentz fan, so I feel like he likes to throw a lot of interceptions, but he is experienced and he could step in and do the job for Mahomes if needed. And this Houston team hasn't been the scariest team to play this year. They're both coming off wins, but they haven't been very impressive at all. CJ Stroud hasn't been above 20 fantasy points since week 5. They're trying to continue to get the running game going again with Mixon, but Mixon hasn't been doing much the last few weeks. This isn't the best matchup either to try to get that running game restarted against the Kansas City defense. Last week, the Texans only managed 181 total yards against the Dolphins. So I'm not excited about that. There's a lot that I'm not excited about in this game. With Patrick Mahomes being out, I I don't want to guess what's going to happen to the wide receivers. We haven't seen a whole lot from Patrick Mahomes, but if you take him out, now I don't trust it even more. And then Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt are sharing all of the carries as well at running back, so they're not a must start either. There's like no must starts on the Chiefs offense. Maybe you can start some of the Texans players. So Nico Collins continues to get all of the targets or a majority of the targets. I guess Travis Kelsey or Noah Gray, if even if Wentz is in, he might be looking to check it down to the tight end. But again, they're going to share. We've been seeing them share with Mahomes in there. So you'd have to pick which one it's going to be. I don't think any of these players are probably winning your fantasy matchup.
And I don't think this has any playoff implications for Kansas City. Would it have any implications for Houston?
It wouldn't. Houston's pretty far ahead. The Colts can't really catch them. The Colts need help now getting into the playoffs.
Well, let's continue on to Pittsburgh at Baltimore then, where Baltimore is favored. Over under is 44, and this is our other Saturday game. This was one where I got really wrong a couple weeks ago because I remember this game very distinctly of expecting it to be more explosive than it ended up being with field goals to win.
And I think this week we're seeing this line at 44 reflect that slightly. I mean, Baltimore is a heavy favorite, and that is due to the injuries from the Steelers. And it's completely steering this line to the 6.5 points for Baltimore. George Pickens with a hamstring injury still isn't practicing. TJ Watt on defense has an ankle injury and did not practice. Cornerback Dante Jackson did not practice either. So all of these injuries for the Steelers are just mounting up. Last week against the Eagles, the Steelers couldn't run or pass the ball. Najee Harris led the rushing attack for the Steelers last week with 14 yards on 6 carries. Yeah, they were behind, but there was no rushing game there whatsoever. And Russell Wilson had 128 passing yards. That's just a sad day for the Steelers. They could easily wind up seeing that happen again against the Ravens, who are a game behind the Steelers in the division and have to be looking to close in and get that tie on Saturday. Last week, Lamar looked like he was trying to jump in that MVP talk, but I don't know that he's got much hope with Josh Allen. But Lamar Jackson did have 5 touchdowns last week and with the win over the Giants, but it was the Giants. Still,
Yeah.
you guys start Lamar Jackson. You guys start Derrick Henry. We could see the Steelers defense step in there, but with all of these injuries, I feel like this game's going to look different than the last time these two teams played a few weeks ago. Steelers are going to try to get healthy and make that playoff run, but they may be losing this battle a little bit.
Any on your maybe starts? What about Mark Andrews or Zay Flowers?
Yeah, they're both, questionable starts. We've been seeing Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely kind of share the snaps, but even though they're like at 50%, we're seeing Mark Andrews run more of the routes and get targeted just a little bit more. So I like Mark Andrews a little bit over Isaiah Likely. And then Zay Flowers had a great game, but now he's got to do it again. So he's always a with caution and depending on who you have kind of player.
And so if you have a wide receiver in some of these other better matchups, that's who you're going to want to start instead, likely. Let's move on to Cleveland at Cincinnati, where Cincinnati's favored by 7.5. The over under is 46.5. And this is kind of surprising that Cincinnati's favored by 7.5. I guess I am excluding some most recent Jameis Winston interceptions and everything and thinking largely about mid-season Cleveland Browns where we were getting shocked.
Well, I think this line is coming off of the fact that they're going to bench Jameis Winston for Dorian Thompson Robinson, DTR. And I don't get that. I mean, we've all just been having a blast watching Winston play, and I think the fans are a little bit angry as well. It's like, come on, just let us watch Winston. He throws interception, but at least he's fun. We're going to lose, but we have a good time watching it at least. And with DTR in there, it's going to be a lot of nothing. So, in my opinion, the whole offense is downgraded with DTR in there. Maybe we'll get to see him pop Jameis Winston in there when DTR isn't doing anything either. Last week, Nick Chubb broke his foot. So, all of the running responsibility is going to Jerome Ford. And he's a great start against a Bengals defense that doesn't put up a lot of resistance. So he should have a really good day. Plus, he's got all the carries. Jerry Judy's been targeted like crazy 14 targets and catching 11 of them last week. But now we get DTR. So, what are we supposed to make of that? Cedric Tillman may return as well. So, now if I got two wide receivers in the mix and I got a backup quarterback, I'm not super interested in starting them anymore. And David Njoku, their tight end, didn't practice again on Wednesday, so that's not looking very promising. Obviously, let's switch over to the Bengals side of the ball. It was Burrow's sixth straight game with 3 touchdowns. And Chase Brown had 25 carries for 97 yards in the win over the Titans. Again, it's the Titans, but the Bengals, their offense is great. It's just their defense that isn't. That was a fun game to watch as well because there was lots of scoring. So, who are we starting here?
I feel like the easy ones are going to be Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Higgins even. You're going to start
Yeah.
your Bengals
And
players.
Chase Brown. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chase Brown. And then we like Jerome Ford because he's got the backfield all to himself and the defense isn't there. Maybe you could take a chance on Jerry Judy, especially if Cedric Tillman is out again. Then they're going to throw to somebody, I would think. So Jerry Judy becomes a better start without Cedric Tillman in there. I'm still worried about DTR and how that's going to play out.
Let's continue on to the Arizona at Carolina game where Arizona's favored by 4. Over under is 46.5. So Vegas is kind of thinking this is going to be a bit of a back and forth score, I think.
Normally, we would see the home team favored by 3. And so having the away team favored by 4, that's almost a 7-point swing. So you can kind of view this as they're favoring Arizona by a touchdown, really.
Wow.
This is all James Conner. Let's just let James Conner run the ball in this game. He maybe has his best matchup of the year against the Panthers defense. Last week, we saw Trey Benson carry 5 times, but he got injured. So now we've got Trey Benson out, and Connor's going to get even more of the work. Kyler Murray has struggled in the passing game, but he too has a good passing matchup against the Panthers defense. And Trey McBride, we thought last week was going to be Trey McBride's week. He's now racked up 89 catches and 908 yards, and he still doesn't have a touchdown. The
It has to be this
Panthers,
week, right?
it has to be this week. But we said that last week, you know? The Panthers are allowing the most touchdowns to the tight end position. So it really has to be this week. Otherwise, when's it going to be if you can't get it this week? You know, in DFS, we're going straight back to McBride. We're
Yep.
going to have to because he's just getting too many targets, receptions, yards, and he just can't get it in the end zone. So the Cardinals are still technically alive in the NFC West, but they need to keep winning, and then they're going to need to get some help because they're a game behind the Rams and Seattle. It would take some magic, but the magic all begins with them beating the Carolina Panthers to stay in there first. Last week we saw Carolina Panthers hit a wall. They'd been progressing, and we kept talking about, hey, they're looking better. They're looking better. And they pushed the Eagles. And then they lost to Dallas last week. And Bryce Young tossed 2 interceptions. The one surprise in that Panthers game was, especially after Xavier Legette left with a groin injury, and he looks like he's going to be out again this week with that injury. And that was Jalen Coker had a great day once Xavier Legette left the game. Coker had 110 yards and a touchdown. So he's somebody that you could potentially think about, you know, if you need that risky start and you don't have anybody, you're playing that toilet bowl, maybe go with Coker. I also like Adam Thielen just because he does see so many targets and they're consistent and reliable. So I'm good starting Thielen. Your must starts are mostly coming from that Cardinals side. So Trey McBride, James Conner, we can even start running back Chuba Hubbard for the Panthers because he doesn't share and he gets all of the carries as well. I don't know about Kyler Murray. How you feeling about Kyler Murray? He hasn't been getting it done.
That's kind of where I stand is he hasn't been getting it done, and hopefully there are other options out there that I think are going to be better this week, and hopefully you have one of them. Probably in
Yeah,
my mind a mid pack. This is going to be a good matchup for him, so like a higher mid pack, but I would put him in the middle of quarterbacks.
I agree. I think they're just going to, you know, get the ball to James Conner a lot and see where that goes.
Well, let's continue on to Detroit at Chicago, where Detroit is favored by 6.5. The over under is 47.5. Is this going to be, are you on the over side for this one?
I don't think I am. Even though Detroit's defense has had a lot of injuries, Chicago's offense just seems stalled. This is a rematch from the Thanksgiving Day matchup where Chicago only played half that game. They didn't really play that first half, and then they pushed it in the second half and almost tied the game. It was that was the disaster clock management game that got the coach fired. So we've got another rematch here, but this time in Chicago. Last week, we saw the Lions lose David Montgomery to an MCL tear. So Jameer Gibbs is going to get all of the work, or at least that's what the Lions are talking about. That they can give him the full load, and that Gibbs can sustain that. Maybe we see a little bit more passing with only having that one running back, and we're going to have to see what being down to Jameer Gibbs does to that offense. Last week, Jared Goff also passed for 494 yards and 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. He had a great game, other than they lost to the Bills. Bears won't be pushing him to throw 500 yards this week.
Those games are so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I still love most of the Lions players. You're starting Jameer Gibbs, obviously, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. You can I feel like Jared Goff is fine. He's not going to light it up like he did last week, I don't feel like, but I feel like he's going to get his numbers and not much is going to change that. The
What
Lions are
about the
also still fighting for that top spot in the NFC. So they are tied with Philadelphia and Minnesota, and they're tied in their division with Minnesota. Every game matters right now for the Lions, which is kind of why I feel like they're just going to shut down the Bears and not try to risk anything on this game.
I didn't realize that they were still in the fight for the top spot. I think I had
Yeah.
already given the top spot to the Lions in my head.
Oh, no. Everyone's 12-2. Fun times.
What about the Bears side? I don't think they're going for the top spot, but
Yeah, I don't like anything on the Bears side. Caleb Williams, nope, don't. You need to bench him. At running back, it looks like Rashawn Johnson. He had a concussion a few weeks ago and he was a full participant at practice on Wednesday. So it's looking like he's going to come back, which takes away from DeAndre Swift. I just don't like anything on that Bears offense, especially in this matchup that is so important to the Lions.
well,
And they're
let's
coming off that loss to the Bills. I feel like they're gonna be a little angry.
yeah, I the Lions are going to be angry. That was a good back and forth, and so I think they're going to bring some of that into this as well as combined with shutting them down to make sure they win. Let's continue on to the Giants at Atlanta, where Atlanta is favored by 9 and the over under is 41. What do you think here?
I'm a little surprised that they're favored by 9, and I wonder if it's moved a little bit since the announcement, that Michael Penix Jr. is going to start and replace Kirk Cousins at quarterback for the Falcons. I guess they're gonna roll them out and see what they've got. We might as well, because Kirk Cousins has been not good, just bad the last few weeks. It will be interesting to see what they let Penix do, or if they just lean really hard on Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier to run the ball. And it's against the Giants. The Falcons are still in the playoff hunt as well. They're trying to chase down Tampa Bay, but they're going to give this a go. We'll see how it goes for them. I have no idea what the passing attack is going to look like with the rookie quarterback in there. If they're just going to give him a pretty manageable stack of plays to run and mostly hand off the ball to the star running backs.
I feel like we've seen several starting quarterbacks get benched this year. Do we normally have this many in a season?
I feel like we do. There's a lot of bad quarterbacks out there. Yeah. Speaking of quarterbacks, who's going to be the quarterback for the Giants? They're all either hurt or not good. So I think Drew Lock is expected to start because Tommy DeVito left the game last week with a concussion, so he still needs to clear the concussion protocol. For a little while, when DeVito left, we even saw Tim Boyle. Just not a good situation for the Giants. Either way, no matter who's quarterback there, we continue to see Malik Neighbors get all the targets. So whoever's in there is being told throw it to Malik Neighbors, and that's it.
He's your best
Um,
chance.
He's your best chance. He's the only one that can catch the ball, so throw it to him. So he's the only one that I feel like out of this game you need to start is Malik Neighbors. On the running game for the Giants, we're seeing Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary really share that backfield now, and it's just so much of a split. And it's not like either of these teams want to score points. The Falcons were really, really happy with their win, their 15-9 win over the Raiders. And they'd be just as happy with a 15-9 win in this game, I feel like, as well. So no one wants to throw the ball. No one wants to is looking for those big scores. This just isn't the game where we're going to see too much fantasy goodness come from.
Would you start Bijan Robinson? You drafted him high, but now it's playoff
Yeah,
time.
I can definitely start Bijan Robinson. Heck, in this game, they may run so much that Tyler Algier has a shot at having a good day as well if you need a backup running back. And one note from this game that I actually was a little bit surprised at, the Falcons placed their kicker Koo on IR today. He aggravated his hip injury in the game on Monday night, and so their kicker's on IR. So if he was your kicker, you need a new kicker. You probably already knew that because he's been missing a lot of kicks lately.
Yeah, he was so good early in the season. And then there was one week where my kicker got me a lot of points, and we had a whole discussion on it because you don't like kickers.
I hate kickers.
I
Yeah.
think that was the week that
So
like the Atlanta defense was worth 20 points and then the kicker was worth like 17.
crazy. So we
We
have
got
one
one more.
more stinker game, and I feel like the games in this list are not as good. Tomorrow we're going to have better games to talk about. At least I hope so, because this game, Tennessee at Indianapolis. Well, AFC South basement. I guess the Titans are kind of owning that, or tied with the Jaguars owning that. Colts are favored by 3.5. Over unders 42.5. The Colts ran Taylor 22 times last week for 107 yards. And he would have had a touchdown if he didn't decide to drop the ball before he actually crossed the goal line. I do not get why the running backs do that. Why do you even want to drop that ball? Can't you just carry that ball right back over to your bench and place it safely somewhere so you know you have the touchdown? It's crazy, right?
Is it a time management technique of like, oh, well, we're wanting to
No.
run down more time on the clock?
I don't get it. Run over to the official and just hand it to him so we know that you had the touchdown. Anyhow, he dropped the ball. Things started going even worse after that because Richardson just looked bad and the pass game just struggled. No wide receivers get a start for the Colts because I don't know what Anthony Richardson's going to do. I think he last week he completed like 33% of his passes. I don't know that we have a quarterback that's done much worse than that. They should just bench him. Anyhow,
You
they're
also
not going
have
to. There's
the Colts wide receiver who's on concussion, if I'm remembering right.
Yes, which one is
Alec
that?
Pierce.
Okay, Alec Pierce. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's on concussion protocol. I mean, you could, if you're scraping around the bottom, look for a wide receiver, but I don't think so. Just don't. And then the Titans have their own problems, so they're going to bench Will Levis and roll out Mason Rudolph again. The only thing there is we did see that one game where Mason Rudolph came in, and then all of a sudden Calvin Ridley had a good day. So it could happen. It's just not worth betting on the bad teams if you don't have to. You got to start Jonathan Taylor, but that's really the only player I feel like I have to start here in this game.
I wish I could say start Calvin Ridley, but I'm guessing if you're being super competitive in your fantasy playoffs, that's not the direction you really want to go or where you want to risk it. We have other more exciting games that are going to be on part two. So if you didn't hear your game or your player on this part one, and we didn't talk about their game, listen to our part two where we'll probably cover it. If you didn't hear your player and they are in a game in this part one, we're not recommending to start them. There are always lots of people we don't get to talk about, and they wouldn't hit our list of, yes, you should play them.
All right. Well, we'll see you tomorrow for part two and see if we can get some better games that are a little bit more exciting than some of the ones that we talked about today. Join us in our DFS contest if you're looking for something new to try and you're out of your playoffs.
Happy football watching.